then else. So it's going to be .type array type .deck. Let's see, array type .deck. Alright, so if it's complex, then we'll have a... Alright, why don't we do an else here, and then we do the if else kind of here. So this will be a pound if here. So if it's an array, we do that. And same thing here. So if it's an array of complex types, this is going to be what? Just T-array of that type. Alright. Well, that should be fine. So just put array to false on these. Alright, so I need to check these out. The this one should be integer, boolean? Do we call it boolean? The thing about generation template stuff is that it takes a little bit to get everything set up, but then once it's set up, you just like copy paste stuff and it works. So it's kind of tedious to get started with, but then when you get rolling, it's actually really nice. Actually, I have my object types. The type is Boolean, yeah. Allow team swap, Boolean, map path is string, admin path is string. Allow other players to change settings is another Boolean. Alright, so that'll create our struct. Okay, so let's double check. This is an if, then if it's an array, yeah, we got these backwards. We got array type there. If it's not a complex thing, then use these basic types with variable name for list everything. Alright, cool. And we also want an initialize function, I believe, for all these things, where we will set them to default values. So let's do a void reset, maybe is a good name for this thing. Can we just do this all in the H file? Nah, let's not. Let's not. Okay, so for every object in our list, we are going to have a reset function. This should be a U function as well, shouldn't it? Can we call U functions on U structs? Reflection system does not support functions in struct even through C++. Alright, so no, it does not. Okay, so what we're going to want is we want some way to nicely reset these things to their default values. So what we can do is kind of have a proxy object in which we generate a whole bunch of shit in order to have these bindings that we want. So reset here is going to go through every variable and what we're going to want to do is want to do the same thing where if it's a complex variable and it's an array, all we do is variable.name.reset on it. Otherwise, what we do is, I guess we call it reset on both of them because we'll have a reset function on all of our complex object types. So it doesn't matter if it's an array or not. That'll do it just fine. If this is an array here, then this again is just a reset. Otherwise, what we want to do is we want to set it to like a default thing. So if, let's see, variable.default, and let's see, we've got our Java stuff. There's, what's in our type lookup? So we've got like object declaration, alloc. Yeah, I think we're going to have to do something like, if we really want this, we're going to want some sort of default value, which is different in C++ and in JavaScript because all the type syntax is different. And we could go through and change a whole bunch of crap for this, or we could just have like, well, if it's default here, so why don't we just do, if there's this CPP default, why don't we just do C default, then the variable is going to equal, and then we'll just do variable.cDefault. Else if, let's see, variable.default, question mark. Do we have a default value for this? Or should I go ahead and add like default to these things for? I mean, we can just set it to that and just be like, well, that's good enough, yay. Because it'll be like a 0 or something else. 0.0. True or false or what have you. Alright, and then let's also have our blueprint shims. So this will be our U shared object shims. class. And we're going to go through every object and have like a reset. So it'll be like a U function, shims, objects, static void, reset, and then object.name. And inside of our CPP, we just have a whole bunch of these reset functions. Or you just call value.reset on it. Alright, so that should be your C++ stuff. Let's see what we screwed up. Alright, game objects is malformed, so let's figure out why. Missing a comma here. Extra comma there. Do we actually get our shared objects? No. Alright, so we need to add this to our target, right? Alright, so it's going to be these two new files. So Dashkin shared objects.h, and this is inside of objects. It's like there's no way I didn't have an error writing some of that crap. Alright, so error reading file is string Dashkin shared objects.h. It's inside of objects Dashkin shared object. Alright. It actually templated. What? I really got all those stupid commands right the first time? I'm surprised. It doesn't look like it regenerated the project file or something like that. Let me just reload Visual Studio and see if it was actually just Visual Studio being stupid. Did Visual Studio just not decide to not start up or something? Or did I just completely black out? Alright, so shared objects is here, and shared objects is over there. Where the fuck is our reset? Oh, what? Wait. Alright, looks like I accidentally put the wrong thing in the header file and the wrong thing in the CPP file. Look at this, so that's great. So our reset just like didn't even set anything. Right. Okay, so I guess we actually have to set a default value for this thing, otherwise it's not going to do anything. Too many freaking things open. So I think we probably just want to have something simple. Something like this. And what we can do is if it's an array, we just reset. If otherwise, okay. So really, it's just like if variable dot type equals, string. Otherwise, we'll just do it like that and kind of hack it in there. But I think the only type that we're going to have to special case is if it's a string type. So why don't we just do that. Okay, so it looks like it all actually worked. So let's fix some of that. Stupid variable garbage town going on. Okay, so we've got our reset function, we've got our shim reset function, and all that. This looks like app dedicated server options. Yeah, it's got a body and everything. Let's see if it all builds. And as usual, it failed. Alright. That's because we put static on the front of our function implementation, which shouldn't be there. That looks correct. So let's build it, make sure we have no linker errors or anything else going on to screw up our lives, besides the normal things that screw up our lives. Looks like it's pissed off about the UObject definition of this thing, so we need that definition. And let's just pretty up the file a little bit just to make it look like we're not just insane. They may be the scrawlings of a madman, but they're at least partially organized. Alright, cool. Alright, so we'll just wait for this to finish compiling, as usual. Alright, so that all compiled nicely. Excellent. So that's our objects. We should probably have a few more objects that we go ahead and mess around with here. So we're going to want a test simple object, which let's just have a string array here, type string, and we set like array to true. Well, what I would like is to have like an array at the end of it, as opposed to saying like array true. But it's probably not that big of a deal, to be honest. I don't want to make the whole gigantic object system that I have for the service autogens, so let's just not do that. And what do we have this? If this is complex equals true. So something along these lines. So we're going to have an issue here where this needs to end in an F. But, yeah. So inside of our defaults here, and then else if type is float. Alright, let's see if it works. No, it exploded. Variable name. Can I convert Boolean to string automatically because the Boolean format setting was true or false, which is legacy? It is not. If you want just true or false result, as you use $C. Alright, let's see if this does it then. But we just did that. Alright, so it's shared objects.h that it's pissed off? So is it... variable.complex. Alright, so if complex exists, okay, we want to use the type. That's what we're supposed to be using. Alright, so that got through variable complex line 21. Alright, this is in CPP variable line 24. So it's here. What? Expected a number or Boolean, but this evaluated to a string and extended hash. Oh, okay, so like we need to be more specific with these things and give them numbers like this. Which is, we actually should be doing, like that's a better plan. Unterminated line 19? Yeah. And this is pissed off about expected a number of Boolean, but this is a string. Alright, so are there any strings here that... Yeah, this is... How is that not a parse error? That's not valid JavaScript. Fucking JSON. Okay, so we got dedicated server options. We have test simple object, which is a T array of floats, and we've got our bool array, string int float bool reset. Okay, then we have our object array here and our object here. It's test simple object, which is not correct. It needs to be in our H file. It's going to be the F version of this, so it's variable.type. All right, let's see if it compiles. Alright, so it does compile. Excellent. So let's get our JavaScript autogens for our stuff. I guess if we have an enum type, that could be another thing. Like, I guess it's a complex thing, but if it's an enum, we need to do that before we move on. So objects, game objects should have, I guess if it's an enum type, so it's like enum, the type is going to be BS teams or just teams. Alright, so it'll be array true, and this will be default of, what should the default be for this? Just red? Okay, so if we went with our H file, we are going to check if this is a complex thing. Okay. And we're going to do an else if variable dot enum variable dot type, variable dot name, and this is going to be like so. And then inside of our CPP file, we're going to have another thing. This will be an else if. And then if it's an array, we do reset. So if variable dot array else if, this will just be variable dot name dot reset. Otherwise, we're going to say variable dot name equals EBS underscore variable dot default. We need the enum namespace. So what are the namespaces looking like? They're the type of it, and then the rest. Okay, so the game object type is going to be teams, so it's going to be yeah, okay, so it's EBS variable that type then variable dot default should be the type. Okay, so let's generate that and make sure it works. Let's fix some of our stupidity. So we've got enum equals EBS red and enum array reset. Alright, so let's build it and check out. If it does what we want, we got our include at the top. It includes shared objects, and shared objects includes shared enums. So EBS underscore teams, is that? EBS underscore teams, yeah. That's what it says. So the idea basically is we're building this big auto generation system for all of our defines that we'll be sharing between our user interface and the game. And what this will allow us to do is have compile time checking for everything. EBS teams red. It needs to be in uppercase. Okay. So I can just fix that here. Or I can just do variable defaults and then what is the uppercase? It's just uppercase, like so. Because that'll probably be a pretty common error where I copy paste something in there. Who cares? It's already uppercase, so to hell with it. And now it's red. Okay, good. Let's build it. And so once we've got all this autogen, basically we'll be able to easily make a new object, use it in blueprints, and pass it back and forth between our user interface and our game. And we also want to set up like an auto generate event system where it'll automatically notify listeners in the UI when a variable changes on an object. So when we modify one of these things, basically the UI will automatically refresh itself. We don't have to go do a big hookup thing and screw around with 2 million different things. It'll just be like, well, here's the new data. Okay, cool, thank you, and it'll work, supposedly. And we'll see if we can make that efficient or not. Like passing all these chunks of data over, like get all modified things, and it'll just like get them all in one big list or something without a whole bunch of crap and hook it all up. Alright, so it compiled, so we have this set up properly with enums now. So we'll do the JavaScript side of the objects. Alright, so for every object, we're going to make a new object. So it's kind of the same thing as the enums. Do we just throw these things out here? We have an F on the front, that's all. Why don't we just keep that convention? We'll just have an F on the front, that way we always know what thing we're working off of. Okay, so we want kind of the same sort of thing. So if this is a complex, yeah, we'll just copy paste this. So if it's a complex object, if it's an array, then we're going to do this dot variable name equals array. Like, and that's how we do array in JavaScript. If this is not a complex array, then we're going to say variable name equals new, and then it's going to be variable.type, but we got to throw an F on the front. If this variable is an enum, what we're going to do is this dot variable name, if it's an array, we set it to this. If it's an array, if it's not an array, we're going to set it to variable.type. I guess we should just set it to, like, if this is what our enums are, then this is, we don't want these as functions. We want these as variables. Okay, so I need to go to the enums.js. This needs to be var evs, and then we need to do equals, and then these need to be commas after the end here. And so it'll just be and then we'll just do dot undefined. Enum.js. This should be undefined. I think that's what we want. Okay, so it's going to do ebs type.undefined as our kind of whatever, just as an initial thing. Okay, so if this is just a primitive, it's just going to be like this dot variable name equals. Alright, so if it's an array, we'll do that. Otherwise, types.type? No, this is going to be types dot like. I mean, we could just set it to null and just be like, yeah, it's a default thing, so it's just going to be null. We could also set it to the default values here for this. Okay, so we have the object name, variable name, alright, it's for the array there, the type, because it's just a This needs to be a new object of that type. If it's an enum array, set it to this, otherwise set it to this. What we want to do is check here if, because we don't need like a reset function here for this guy, we could just use our defaults inline, so we need like an if for our objects. Alright, so it's not an enum array, so else if, yeah, let's do variable dot default. I guess the default should always be set. Like if it's not there, we should just explode. So it should just be an else, and then variable dot type, and then dot, and then variable dot default, uppercase. Okay, so that should do that, and this guy should also. Okay, so if the variable type is a string, yeah, we want this guy right here. It's basically variable dot type for this. Variable dot default, and I think it's just like that, because that should do it. Alright, so we need to add this to our targets. So this is objects/objects.js, and that's where it's going to go. Alright, so it blew up on enums.js unknown built-in upper. Did it actually say which? It's just right here. What? Line 17? Is that the thing that's blowing up on? No. Alright, so what is it actually exploding on? It's in enums.js. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong file then. Whoops. Uppercase. I'm gonna learn how to read. Alright, so we are inside of objects.js, line 34. We've got two closing lists. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have the uppercase here, get from string. This thing is no longer an object though, so we're going to want another yeah, we just want to change that function name to something that we can actually do. So it should just be like function blah, like that. Or I can add a new variable here, which is this. dot get string for enum equals value. This dot get string for enum equals function, and then we just have this thing inline like that, which actually I think will probably work better. So why don't we do it that way? So yeah, so on this object, get string for enum, and then you'll get your string back. Alright, so let's go to our index.html, and we're going to include the objects.js here. And let's make sure it actually compiles. No, it doesn't. enums.js line 8 has an issue. This dot undefined. Yeah, so all these need to be they all need to be in object declaration form. So this needs to be without the this is. Is that the syntax? So it looks something like this. Let's see if it is. Yeah, so that didn't explode anywhere. That worked fine. Okay, so we've got our objects now in JavaScript land as well as otherwise. Let's make sure that we actually do have our objects in JavaScript land. New ftest. This dot object is screwed up. This dot string. All right, that's fine. So objects.js, we need this to start on that guy. Let's double check. All the other thises look like they're in place. Okay, that seems like it should work fine.